Welcome to my 2021 college football season preview of the Big Ten Conference, part of my series where I'm going through and previewing all 10 FBS conferences plus independents. Excited to get in here with the Big Ten. COVID season really threw a wrench into things last year, not just in how the teams performed last year, but also how and analyzing how those teams are going to be performing this year. Probably the hardest season of any to analyze just because of what happened last year. Teams really didn't play up to their full potential due to the way that COVID impacted practices, the way that the COVID impacted schedule. Some conferences playing a pretty much normal, some conferences playing pretty much normal across the board schedule with non-conference matchups. Some conferences going conference only, such as the Big Ten did. Some conferences having some teams only playing 4 games in their conference, such as some teams in the MAC and the Pac-12. Some teams playing 12 games or 10 or 12 games. So incredibly difficult to compare and analyze across the board, but I'm giving it my best shot. Last 3 or 4 years on my own, I've been going through the Athlon Sports magazines, which is the magazine I use just because of the format. I don't really like the analysis, but I like their format. I've been going through, I've been making my predictions. At the end of the year, I've been going back and checking them, and every year I've been better than what Athlon Sports was predicting. So this is the first year that I'm putting it out on the channel, but I figured it was about time. At least that way I'll have a little bit of proof to back up when I to back me up when I say that I was better than Athlon Sports. Hopefully that's the case this year. I fully expect to be off on some of these teams. Some of these teams I think will surprise me, surprise the rest of the analysts, end up having a great year. That's the thing with COVID. You don't know if a team had a bad year last year because that team's on a downhill trend, or just because that team was impacted by COVID protocols. Was Michigan State's 2 and was it 5 record last season? Was that because of COVID, or was that because the team's on a downhill trend? Was Indiana's outstanding year last year when they went 6-2, almost won the Big Ten? Was that because of COVID lowering the bar of competition across the NCAA and in the Big Ten itself, or is that because Indiana's improving? So all those questions I'm going to hope to answer here and give my predictions. Make sure you stick around for the end of the video where I'm going to line up where each of these teams are going to probably be finishing within their conference, give a prediction on who's going to be playing in that Big Ten championship game. All right, so let's get started here with Indiana. So last year, like I said, 6-2 record, 6-1 Big Ten. Of course, that one loss to Ohio State, which they barely lost. 7-point loss right there to Ohio State. 8-5 record the year before that. I don't think that this was a fluke. I think that Indiana has been steadily improving over the last few years. I think that they have an excellent coaching staff here under Tom Allen, who's really been getting Indiana back into a level where they can actually compete in the Big Ten and not be a bottom feeder in the league. I'm excited to see what they can do this year. I just think, when you have a team that plays so well down the stretch with wins against Maryland and Wisconsin towards the end there, that Wisconsin win is significant, I think. When you have a team playing that well down the stretch, when it's deep into the season, when teams have had a chance to actually start getting better, when teams have had a chance to actually get used to the COVID season overall, get into practices, and they're still winning games, I think that says a lot. I'm excited to see what Indiana can do this year. Athlon Sports projecting 8-4, 6-3. I'm going to go better than that. I think they're going to go 9-3, 6-3. I do think that they're going to get a win against Cincinnati, which is where Athlon Sports is projecting a loss there. I think that Cincinnati is going to be overlooking Indiana. I do think Cincinnati is the better team, but I think that Cincinnati is going to be overlooking Indiana for their Notre Dame matchup the week following. Going to have to go into Indiana to play. I think Indiana is going to be highly motivated. I do think they're a good team with a lot of returners back, 9 starters back on defense, 8 back on offense, including their starting quarterback. We had a pretty good year last year with 14 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. So really great turnover margin there. I'm excited to see what they can do. I think that they'll open up with wins against Iowa, Idaho, Cincinnati, Western Kentucky, Penn State, Michigan State. I think they will suffer a loss to Ohio State, who I expect to be much better this year. And then I think that they'll also take a loss, not because that they should. I think they should win the game I'm about to mention here, but Indiana is not at a point where they're going to be consistent yet. I think that eventually Tom Allen's going to be able to get this team up to the level of being a consistent competitor in the Big Ten. But right now, I think they're going to drop a game that they should lose, that they should win. And I think and I'm just going to say that's probably going to be Michigan. They're going to have to go play at Michigan, tough environment. I think Michigan takes the win there, even though I think Indiana should win that game. And then I think they'll finish off the season with a 3-0 record there at Rutgers, Minnesota, and Purdue for a pretty exciting overall season for Indiana and a chance to compete for the Big Ten championship, or to be in the running for the Big Ten championship once again. All right, moving on to Maryland. So Maryland, we got West Virginia, Howard, Illinois, and Kent State. So that's kind of their non-conference record there. So projections going on for last season: 2-3 last season, and 3-9 the year before that. So this is a Maryland team that wasn't just suffering because of COVID last year. They've been on a downward trend for a while now. Athlon Sports projecting that they're going to go 6-6, 4-5. I don't think so. I think that they're having to replace their running back. Mike Locksley, Mike Locksley, who's in his third year, really hasn't shown that he's a coach who can bring Maryland kind of out of their down patch and put them back into competition in the Big Ten. I think they're going to go 4-8, 2-7. I do think they'll open up 3-1. I think they'll suffer a loss to West Virginia, but then beat Howard, Illinois, and Kent State before taking a loss to Iowa and losing all the way down until that final game against Rutgers, where I think they can pull off a win to end the season. All right, Michigan Wolverines. Michigan record last year 2-4, and prior to that they'd gone 9-4. So 2019 9-4, 2020 2-4. I think this is a case of the COVID blues hitting them. Jim Harbaugh is a coach who I think is much better than that 2-4 record. I am a Jim Harbaugh fan. Now, having said that, Michigan lost a lot of players on offense. They only have 3 returners on offense. They're having to replace their quarterback, their running back. 3 out of the 5 starters on the offensive line all having to be replaced. This is a really hard. It's a really hard system to have to do a rebuild on this year, especially a year which I think Jim Harbaugh is starting to feel the hot seat a little bit. There's been big expectations for him to come in and do great things in Ann Arbor, which just hasn't materialized. He hasn't been able to get those wins against Ohio State. He hasn't been able to institute Michigan as a top contender in the Big Ten, even though he has, I think, improved them as a team. They just haven't gone to the level that they should. So like I said, I'm a big Jim Harbaugh fan. I like how he keeps going after teams, even deep in the second half, and keeps pushing pedal to the metal, but it just hasn't materialized into the wins that are necessary. So Athlon Sports is projecting 7-5, 5-4, and I'm going to agree with them on this one. I think it is going to be 7-5, 5-4, and Jim Harbaugh's number might be up at the end of this year if they have another disappointing season like that. I think it's unfortunate. It's just a really tough schedule. I think they're better than that 7-5 record, but they have games against Washington. So I'm just going to name some of the top ones here: Washington, Wisconsin, Northwestern. They do play Michigan State and Ohio State and Penn State. All those are going to be very tough games. I think they're going to suffer losses against Washington, Wisconsin, Northwestern. I think they're going to take a loss to Penn State, and I think they're also going to take a loss to Ohio State. It's just going to be a very tough season overall. I would love to see them pull off a much better season than that. I have been. I'm not a Michigan fan per se, but I am a Michigan supporter to a certain extent. One of my favorite professors was a Michigan fan, so I've rooted them on ever since then. So I'm excited to see what they can do, but I just don't think that it's going to materialize into being a good season for Michigan this year, as a little bit of rebuilding, especially on offense. And we'll have to see if Harbaugh still keeps his job at the end of the year. I just want to take a pause here. You're probably wondering, what's a Boise State fan doing critiquing these Big Ten teams? Well, I am a Boise State fan, but I primarily and foremost, I was a military brat. I've had 18 homes in 25 years. I played my high school football up in the Midwest, up in Ohio, actually, at Troy Christian High School. So I've moved around a lot. I wasn't pegged in. I only lived in Idaho for 2 years, actually. So I've moved around a lot. I've gotten to experience a lot of the country. I think it gives me a unique perspective when it comes to the college football landscape. Besides that, I'm a college football junkie. I watch 10 games at a time. I get 2 computers going with 4 games on each of them. I try to watch game on the television, game on my iPhone. I try to watch every single game of the college football season, and I'm so pumped for the season here just in under 3 weeks. So kind of just want to take a break there, build a little bit of credibility, and let's keep moving on. Hopefully I haven't said anything to damage that credibility too much in this analysis. Michigan State Spartans, last year 2-5. Prior to that, 7-6. Really terrible season for Michigan State last season, and I don't think that it was COVID. I think that it's a downhill trend after going 7-6 the year before that. Mel Tucker in his first season there for Michigan State, 2-5. Obviously didn't get to institute his game plan into the system because of COVID and wrecking it the way it did, especially with the practices. So I don't think he can be blamed entirely, but Michigan State is having to replace their quarterback and running back. They do return 14 starters overall throughout offense and defense, 7 on each, but I think it is going to be a little bit of a challenging year. Athlon Sports is predicting 4-8, 2-7. I'm going to say better than that. I think they're going to go 5-7, 3-6. But I do think that they're going to take a lot of losses here throughout the season. I do think they can have some wins against Youngstown State, Western Kentucky, Rutgers, Purdue, Maryland. Rutgers, Purdue, and Maryland, but I think other than that, especially their non-conference games here against Miami, it's going to be very tough sledding down the road, and I think it's probably going to end up with a lot of losses, more than Michigan State is used to taking at least. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that Michigan State is a team. They are a heralded program in the Big Ten. really kind of used to being one of those flagship schools, and I think they'll get back to that. But I think it is going to be a couple of years. Give Mel Tucker at least another season to institute his offense and his defensive schemes, and we'll see what happens next year. All right, Ohio State Buckeyes, the flagship program of the Big Ten. Of course, going 7-1 last year, 5-0 Big Ten, winning against Clemson and losing to Alabama in the national championship game. They went 13-1 the season before that. This is a team that is perennially one of the top teams in the nation, regardless of who's at quarterback, and apparently regardless of who's at coach. It doesn't seem to matter with Ryan Day coming in and going 23-2 in his first 2 years. So really outstanding job. COVID didn't seem to throw them for much. They came out and they were dominant in the Big Ten as always. A couple of close games there, especially against Indiana. Northwestern was a little bit close for comfort, but coming in and playing really hard throughout the season, and I think that we're going to see that again this year. Now, they do lose their starting quarterback, but like I said, it doesn't seem to matter who's in there. They do go out and do a great job. Athlon Sports predicting 13-0, 9-0 overall Big Ten. Sorry, 13-0 overall, 9-0 Big Ten. So you look at their non-conference schedule here, okay? They play Oregon, Tulsa, and Akron. Tulsa and Akron should be wins. Tulsa might be a little more challenging than they're expecting. I think Tulsa's going to be a pretty good American Athletic Conference team, but I think that should be a win. Now, Oregon's the big question mark. They're going to have to go play at Oregon. I think they might be underestimating them a little bit. I think Oregon's going to be a really good team this year after taking kind of a step backwards in the COVID season last year. I think Oregon's going to be a really good team. I think Ohio State goes and gets upset at Oregon despite all the odds, despite all the predictions. I think Oregon comes, Ohio State goes up to Oregon, gets upset there, but then recovers well, comes down the rest of the stretch, wins every Big Ten game. So I'm going to say 11-1, 9-0 is my projection for Ohio State this year. I think they're capable of beating Oregon. I think they might even be the better team, but I think that's going to be a really interesting. That's probably one of my most looked forward to first couple of weeks there of the opening season matchups. I'm excited to see that game. I think it could really go either way, and I think that a lot of people are sleeping on Oregon a little bit. I think they're going to be a very good football team. You can watch my Pac-12 video when I get there, but I think that Ohio State's going to go in there, take a little bit of a loss, but hey, Buckeye fans, it doesn't seem to matter. Back in, I think it was 2014, first season of the playoffs, and they took a loss to Virginia Tech, managed to turn that around into a playoff, getting into the playoffs anyway, running the table in the Big Ten. Big Ten, pretty respected across the league as far as the Power 5 conferences go, so I think that Buckeyes will be just fine. So finishing off the season here after that loss to Oregon on a 9-0 run to finish off the year. All right, 10-0 run to finish off the season there with a win against Minnesota and a loss to Oregon. All right, Penn State Nittany Lions, a team that was 11-2 in 2019, but went 4-5 last year in the changing format there for the Big Ten, playing only conference games. Really hard team to analyze because, obviously, like I said, great season in 11-2, kept the same head coach they've had for 7 years, James Franklin there. Had really bad first 5 games where they lost 5 in a row, including losses to Maryland and Nebraska, which is pretty embarrassing for a Penn State caliber team. And then they finished the season on a 4-0 streak, but they finished it against teams that were having down years or weren't very good overall, with wins against Michigan, Rutgers, Michigan State, and Illinois. And there's no outside factors to analyze them against. So you have to ask, okay, was this a COVID fluke year, or was this Penn State on a downward trend? I think that it was a COVID fluke year that really messed them up, especially considering that they had all that momentum with the 4 wins, even though they weren't against great teams. I think it took them a while to get their feet underneath them there coming in. I believe they were starting a new quarterback last year. I'm not entirely sure on that, but that quarterback's back this year. Sean Clifford is back. Pretty good turnover margin with 16 touchdowns, only 9 interceptions, threw for over 1,800 yards. So a very competent quarterback, especially considering the 9-game season there. So Athlon Sports thinks that they're going to be back on the upward trend here with an 8-4, 6-3. I think that's correct. I think they're going to do better than that, though. I think they're going to go 9-3, 7-2. Their non-conference schedule is decently tough here. Actually, it's pretty smooth sailing with games against Ball State and Villanova, but they do have to play Auburn. I'm going to do my SEC video here in a few videos, so make sure you've watched that video, especially if you've got any opponents especially SEC opponents you're going to be watching. I'll go more in depth there, but I think that they are going to go into Auburn. New head coach there, former Boise State coach Brian Harsin over there, who's going to bring, I think, an exciting new offensive style to Auburn. I think Auburn has one of the top quarterbacks, definitely one of the most underrated quarterbacks in Bo Nix, who I think is going to have an excellent year, and Brian Harsin, who's done an incredible job developing quarterbacks in the past. I'll speak more to that when I get to that preview video, but I think that is going to be a loss for Penn State there. A game that I think most people are expecting Penn State to win, with a lot of expectations going into Auburn. Brian Harsin fired up. I think he is the better coach here. I have a ton of respect for him, having seen him coach at Boise State over the last few seasons. I'm excited to see that game. I think Penn State might be the better team here, but I think Auburn gets the win. After that, I think they're also going to take a loss to Indiana, who's definitely up and coming in this league, and I think is going to have an excellent season again. And I think they'll take a loss to Ohio State. But besides that, it should be smooth sailing. I think they'll get some nice wins here, especially against Michigan State, Michigan, and Rutgers. And I think they're going to have a pretty good season overall. Of course, I'm predicting an opening win against Wisconsin. So Penn State back on the horse, back moving forward, back on the Lions instead of the Nittany Lions, but moving forward and moving upwards again to be a competitor in the Big Ten like they usually are. All right, Rutgers Scarlet Knights, always a bottom feeder in the Big Ten, it seems. I can't remember the last time that Rutgers was good. I don't think they've been so in my, at least in my lifetime. They're a team that went 3-6 last year and 2-10 the year before that. So really just not. And you know what? I'm gonna correct myself. I haven't been paying attention to Rutgers for more than 5 years, so I don't know if they've been. They may have been good at some point in the last 25 years. Who knows? So I don't want to get people to get sidetracked by that. The main point is recent history. They've been absolutely terrible. Definitely bottom of the league, at least as far as the Big Ten goes, and even as far as the Power 5 goes, kind of the Kansas of the Big Ten. So Athlon Sports is projecting 4-8, 2-7. I think it's going to be worse than that. I think it's going to be 2-10, 1-8. They do return their quarterback and their running back, Noah Vedral and Isaiah Pacheco, players who had decent seasons. Isaiah there with 500 yards, over 500 yards rushing, and Noah with over 1,200 yards passing. But he did almost throw as many interceptions as touchdowns, 8 to 9. I think that they're going to open up with losses against Temple and even Syracuse, who is themselves a bottom feeder in the ACC. I think they can get a win against Delaware, their FCS opponent. I think they can get a win against Illinois. But other than that, I think it's going to be a lot of losses this season. Greg Schiano there, 12 years at the school, 71-73. So pretty much even record overall, but has had a few bad years here in the past. I think Rutgers, it's going to take a lot to get that team back on track to being a team that can compete in the Big Ten or even in college football, period. I think it's going to take them a while to get there, a long while. It's going to take a lot of shakeups. They're going to need new coaching staff. They're going to need something to draw recruits that they just haven't had that ability to do in the past. So we'll see what happens there, but I think it's going to be another disappointing season for Rutgers. All right, Fighting Illinois. 2-6 last season, 6-7 the year before that. 6-7 was actually pretty good for Illinois, who's kind of been one of those teams that struggled to get bowl eligible, even considering being even if they are a bottom feeder in the Big Ten, they've struggled to get bowl eligible. So 2019 was actually a pretty good year for Illinois. Last year, though, took another step backwards. A lot of that due to COVID, but I think that's probably going to continue again this season. They do return a lot of starters, 8 starters on offense, including the starting running back and quarterback. But it really wasn't a perennial starting quarterback as that was. Illinois had 3 quarterbacks throw for over 300 yards. Real quarterback battle there throughout the season. It seems like one has developed there in Brandon Peters towards the end of the season. 429 yards and 3 touchdowns. Chance to definitely come back and be the starter, but and maybe give a little bit of consistency to that quarterback position. But I just don't think it's going to translate into wins, at least not with this coaching staff. Well, I say that with this coaching staff. Brett Bielema, I'm excited to see what he can do. I do have respect for him as a coach. It's his first season, but it's going to take a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years before Illinois starts becoming even a middle-of-the-pack Big Ten team, I think. So 2-10, 0-9 is my prediction. I think they can grab a win against UTSA, a pretty bottom-end Conference USA team, as what I believe that UTSA is there. University of Texas San Antonio. Conference USA team. I think they can grab a win there, and I think they can grab a win against Charlotte, another Conference USA team. But other than that, a lot of losses across the board, especially within conference play. All right, Iowa, a team that went 6-2 last year, had an excellent season. That's going after going 10-3 in 2019. A team that's really established themselves as one of the top-end Big Ten teams that really challenges for that Big Ten championship slot. Athlon Sports predicting 8-4, 6-3 overall. I'm going to go one better. I think it's going to be 9-3, 7-2 Big Ten. I think they're going to win one more Big Ten game than Athlon is projecting here. I do think they open up with a kind of a disappointing start to the season with losses to Indiana and Iowa State. Iowa State, of course, going to be excellent this year. Just did my Big 12 review, the video before this. I think Iowa State's going to be excellent this year like they were last year. Really hard game there. I think they're going to take that rivalry game. But then I think they're going to go on a nice little run here. The wins against Kent State, Colorado State, and Maryland should be 3 easy wins before suffering a loss to Penn State. But I think they'll finish the season off here undefeated with a 6-0 run to finish the season, have a really strong contention, and maybe end up playing in that Big Ten championship game. I'll give my review here at the end about where they end up. All right, Minnesota Golden Gophers. Just to note there, they do return their starting quarterback and running back, which is big for them. Even though they only have 5 starters back on offense, the key positions there, quarterback and running back, they got the starters back. That's always what I've seen has been the most impactful for a team. Wide receivers tend to be able to be replaced. Offensive linemen are a little bit harder, but they can be managed. But if you don't have a quarterback or running back who's dependable, you're not going to go anywhere. A good quarterback can do everything for you, and consistency in that position is really what drives the team forward, and especially if you can have that workhorse running back, which Iowa does in their running back Tyler Goodson, who ran for over 700 yards last year, 5.3 yards per carry. All right, Minnesota Golden Gopher is a team that in the last few years has actually established themselves as a pretty competent team. Of course, 2019 going 11-2, so excellent job. Took a step back last season with a 3-4 record. I think they're going to get better this year than they were last season. I don't think they're going to get back to that 11-2 ways. They do return their starting quarterback and their starting running back, as well as 9 starters on offense and 6 on defense. So that's pretty good overall there. And their quarterback they have is a decent quarterback with over 1,300 yards passing, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions there, Tanner Morgan. And P.J. Fleck coming in his 4th year has done some wonders for Minnesota, definitely turned that program around. Athlon Sports is projecting 7-5, 4-5. I think I'm going to agree with them here. I think Minnesota is probably better than that record-wise, but it's just a really tough schedule. I think they're going to drop their opener against Ohio State. I then think they're going to go on a 6-0 run, jump into the rankings, wins against Miami, Ohio, Colorado, Bowling Green, Purdue, Nebraska, Maryland. Really get a good start there. Definitely jump in the AP rankings. And then I think they'll suffer a loss to Northwestern, who looks to be a pretty good team, especially after last year appearing in the Big Ten championship game. I think they'll catch a win against Illinois, but then they have a really hard finish off the bat here with Iowa, Indiana, and Wisconsin to end the season. I don't think they're going to get through that unscathed. I think they're going to suffer 3 losses there. So end what was a promising season with kind of a downward spiral. But I think it is, considering where they're at, considering the season they had last year, I think it should be something that is not too disappointing overall and should be a pretty good season for P.J. Fleck here as he tries to reestablish the 2019 pride in this Minnesota Gophers team. All right, Nebraska Cornhuskers. Now, this was a team that perennially, it's a historic team. It's a team that has competed over the years and won big things in the NCAA. But it's a team that in the last few years has really kind of been trending downward in the Big Ten, especially 5-7 in 2019 and 3-5 last year. I think that continues this year. Athlon is projecting a little bit of a boost here, 6-6, 4-5. I don't think that's going to come about. Replacing quarterback, running back, only 3 returners on offense. Only 3 returning players on offense, having replaced 3 out of their 5 linemen. And so they got their center returning, their right tackle, and their tight end. That's not a team that you're building around for success. I think 4-8, 2-7 is more likely here. I think they can grab a win against Michigan State. I think they can grab a win against Purdue. But after that, Southeast Louisiana FCS team should be a win, and Illinois, I think they can get a win there. But other than that, I think that's going to be a pretty disappointing season overall, pushing towards the bottom here. Actually, if they win against Illinois, that'll be 3-6 winning that. So, 4-8, 3-6 overall Big Ten. But I think it's just going to be a little bit of a disappointing season here for Nebraska. Scott Frost coming in on his 3rd year. I think it's probably going to be getting close to hot seat time for him. If it's not already, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens if they do have another disappointing season. Might get one more shot at it, considering that the COVID season was a little bit of gimme, though we did see a lot of coaches get fired. That was interesting with COVID. I wouldn't have thought that coaches would have got fired. I thought they would have been given a free season considering all the difficulties there. But obviously with a South Carolina head coach, he got fired, and then the Auburn coach, Gus Malzahn, he got let go. So there was some some firing around the league, even in the COVID season, and that might be happening. Scott Frost might be getting let go this season, even though in my books I'd only count him as having 2 real seasons to develop his vision at Nebraska. Be interesting to see what happens if they do go 4-8, 2-6. All right, Northwestern, team that went 7-2 last season after going 3-9 in 2019. Now, this is one of those teams you got to look at and go, hey, was that the COVID or was that them having a good year because they're a better team? Now, I say because the way they finished the season, if they'd only played great at the beginning of the season and kind of struggled down the end, I would say, it could have been the COVID. Which we did see a little bit of that with a loss to Michigan State 20-29 before recovering the win against 28-10 against Illinois. But they played Ohio State really close, 10-22. The fact that they were able to hold them that close, really be in the game pretty much throughout the game and have a chance of winning that Big Ten championship tells me that Northwestern is a much better team, I think, than analysts are giving them credit for. Now, they lost pretty much all of their talent. 3 players on offense and 4 players on defense are the only ones returning. Athlon Sports is projecting 7-5, 4-5, and I definitely think it could be that season for Northwestern. But Pat Fitzgerald is an excellent coach who's had 106 wins to 81 losses over the 15 years that he's been with the program. I think that Northwestern is a program that could surprise people this season. They're going to be a team that I think is going to come back and be be one of the top tier teams in the Big Ten. Add that to the fact that they play a pretty easy Big Ten schedule here. They play Michigan State. I think that should be a win. Indiana State, win. Duke, a win. Ohio, that should be a win. Nebraska shouldn't be too hard. Rutgers shouldn't be too hard. Michigan is still having a down season. I think Northwestern will be coming in with a lot of momentum. That is a game that I think they could lose, but I think Northwestern will pull it off there. Minnesota shouldn't give them too many issues. Iowa, I think, will be a loss. Wisconsin will be a loss, but then Purdue and Illinois, they don't have to play Ohio State. This is a pretty easy schedule overall. So I think they escape 10-2, 7-2. I think they're worse than that 10-2 record, but just with how easy the schedule is down the stretch, I think they if they drop a game to Michigan, we might see 2 more losses. They could be going 8-4 here, but they can pull off a win here against Michigan and Minnesota and avoid some other upsets along the way. It could be another pretty special season for Northwestern, at least until bowl season or whatever happens at the end of the season, the championship game. I think they might end up getting blown out in that, but just regular season overall, I think they're going to sneak through here with another great record to give Pat Fitzgerald there another pretty good record here for the school overall. All right, Purdue and Wisconsin, and then we're done. So Purdue here, 2-4 last season, 4-8 the year before that. Athlon Sports projecting 5-7, 3-6. I just don't see it. Downward trend for this program, been so for a long time. Perennial bottom feeder in the Big Ten. Don't return their starting quarterback. A lot of issues there. Jeff Brom, just not a very good head coach, especially at least at this level in the Big Ten, coming into his 5th season. I think they go 2-10, 1-8. I can see wins against Connecticut and Illinois, but other than that, I don't see a lot of wins on this schedule. I think it's going to be another disappointing season for the Purdue Boilermakers. All right, Wisconsin, final team that we're going to review, and then we'll look at how the teams are going to end up stacking up here. Wisconsin went 4-3 last year. Now, that's pretty disappointing for them considering they went 10-4 the season before that. Athlon is projecting that they're going to make a rebound here, 9-4, 7-2. So they're projecting that they're going to go to the Big Ten championship game there. So 9-3, 7-2 regular season. I'm going to concur. I think 9-3, 7-2 is very fair. They have a loss here on the schedule. I'm projecting to Notre Dame. I don't think that's a game they're going to be able to escape through. But the rest of their games here against Eastern Michigan should be pretty easy. That's a pretty easy non-conference schedule there. They also play Penn State, open up the season. I think there'll be a loss to Penn State to start the season there, loss to Notre Dame, loss to Iowa. But other than that, like I said, they don't have to play Ohio State, so it shouldn't be too hard of a schedule here for them to work through. They return their starting quarterback here, Graham Mertz, who had a pretty good year last year, all things considered, over 1,200 yards passing and 9 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. They don't return the starting running back, so that's going to be a question. They do have Jalen Burgers, the head returner right now, with 301 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. So he potentially that guy going to be he's going to probably be their starting running back there. It'll be interesting to see if he can become that workhorse back for them. I think Wisconsin here, they were pretty well coached here under Paul Chryst, coming into his 7th year with a 56-19 overall record. I think they're a team that can rebound from a disappointing season and get back to their 9-10 game winning ways that they have done in the past. Okay, so let's review here at the end. So we're going to look at order of finish and then give a projection for what teams are going to end up, or which teams are going to end up in the Big Ten championship game. So first off, Athlon's projected order is going Ohio State number 1, Penn State number 2, Indiana number 3, Michigan number 4, Maryland number 5, Rutgers number 6, and Michigan State number 7. That's in the East Division. I'm projecting a little bit of a shakeup here, but not much, pretty much towards the end there. Actually, overall, I pretty much concur. Ohio State number 1 for me, same as them. Penn State number 2, Indiana number 3, Michigan number 4. This is where we have a little bit of a disagreement. I think Michigan State's going to finish number 5, Maryland number 6, and Rutgers number 7. So pretty much the same all the way down the East Division. West Division is where we get a little bit chippy here with Athlon, where I've got a little bit of disagreement. They're projecting Wisconsin number 1, Iowa number 2, Minnesota number 3, Northwestern number 4, Nebraska number 5, Purdue number 6, and Illinois number 7. I disagree entirely. I think it's going to be Iowa number 1, Wisconsin number 2, Northwestern number 3, Minnesota number 4, Nebraska number 5, Purdue number 6, and then Illinois number 7. So those last three are the same, but especially big shakeup here in the numbers 1 through 4. With Iowa, I think, is going to be the one taking it overall for the Big Ten on the West Division. Representing the West Division there against Ohio State. So Athlon is projecting Ohio State winning over Wisconsin. I'm making a slight change there. I think it's going to be Ohio State winning over Iowa. In the end, though, it doesn't really matter because we're both projecting Ohio State to win this conference and be a contender there for the playoffs at the end of the season in that Final Four. So make sure that you like and subscribe. Make sure you don't miss my video where I preview the teams that are in potential competition or contention right now to beat contenders for that top 4 slots, and my projections for which teams are going to go to those top 4 and which teams at the end of the day are going to win the national championship overall. So thank you for watching this video. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and as always, go Big Blue.